Kayla, you need me to get? Oh, there we go. Okay. To another edition of Grown Folks Business. It's a beautiful Thursday.
Can I tell you? It's still, to Andre's point, Jay Dwayne's point, it's still so prevalent. And I know I'm tired. I can't imagine what you guys are like being in that skin and like, damned if you do, damned if you do.
In wholeness, I want to live a life without any lack. And that's my ultimate desire. And it's really about inventory, if you will.
Whatnot. And you get really busy and you get on a train track that just carries you through a number of years.
We shared with mom and family that, we won't be there. We won't be home every Christmas. With birthdays that we'll celebrate. We'll call, we'll celebrate, but it might not be on that day.
All right. Welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business. Glad to have some of those familiar faces in the place. I missed you guys. We had a very special show last week with Rashad Galloway. I hope you had a chance to tune in and check it out. If you didn't, go back into the archive and grab it. It's really worth the time. It was a good interview. It's just something we're going to be doing in the Grown Folks Business space, is highlighting some community partners. And some of you guys are on the list. Lisa, you are among them. We're going to be talking about what you do and how you do it. And we'll do a show that just features you in the not too distant future. Tonight's show. Oh, hey, Mary Carmen. Good to know you're on, and glad to know you're watching. Tonight's topic. People, we're getting ready to enter back into that realm of the best reality TV you can see, because that's what it's turned into. It's just, it's almost like we can't wait till another election comes so we can just see how many people going to tune in and watch people talk about nothing. People talk about matters that we think have long been settled, and people not listen to what the actual constituencies are saying, and more so lean towards conjecture and BS. Yes, I'm talking about politics. So tonight's show is called The Politics of People, Morality and Integrity for Sale. I will tell you briefly why this became something that I thought to bring to the space. It's concerning our gubernatorial, however you say it, campaign, and the people who've made it to the final round, who've survived on Survival Island or whatever you want to call it. One of them being a gentleman by the name of Mark Robinson. Something took place that I think is worthy of discussion, and it was primarily not just that Trump endorsed this guy. It was that he said he was better than Martin Luther King, and that he was Martin Luther King on steroids. People, I shudder. We've gotten to a space and a place where I believe the sensationalist tactics, the say anything and not be held to account, is at an all-time high. And politics has always been a nasty, dirty business and filled with all kind of messiness. But man, there were just certain things and certain people who were off limits at one point in time. And that's slowly been chipped away. Everybody's a comedian. Social media has made everybody think they have the best sense of humor ever. So some of the untouchable people like MLK have become memes and such. But it kind of shook me to my core to hear Trump say that. But what made it worse was I don't think Mark Robinson has responded and has said anything to counter that terrible, god-awful comparison. That's where my issue lies primarily. morality and integrity for sale. When would someone not, even if they were the greatest person ever, when would they not say, "Oh, I demure, don't say that about me. That's you can't say that. You can't compare me to one of the best of us." Someone who literally lost their life fighting for fair treatment of us all. God. Whew. So that's the inspiration for me bringing this to the table. I have some awesome people here tonight. Ajane, greatly appreciate you. Celeste, you know how much I care. Lisa, my heart there. I appreciate y'all. I'm glad I have three very knowledgeable women to have this discussion with, and I know you guys are going to bring a lot to the table. So my spiel is done. I just, we'll start with the topic. Are morality and integrity for sale these days? Is it at an all-time high? I think politicians have always been questionable and somewhat problematic, but are we witnessing wholesale morality and integrity, barn burner type deals going on here? Everybody's just trying to get to become a talking head on MSNBC or Fox or something. It's just, they're trying to make careers out of nothing. Just being hot for a moment. So I'm going to start with you, Aj. Morality and integrity for sale. How does that work in your mind as far as politics goes?
Well, thank you all for welcoming me back into the space. I want to start with something that you said. You said that politicians have always done these sorts of things. I think as a historian, the first thing that I will say is that we have always had these sort of questionable antics. There has always been blood in the field. That is how political historians refer to it. Blood in the field. Congress, from its inception, was a violent and bloody landscape. From, duels and fights and all of these things, this stuff has been sort of ingrained into the politics and the political fabric of the United States. With that being said, I think that there was, up until about 1950, I would say that there has been a certain gentility that must have been portrayed in a way. So I wouldn't say that this is a new thing. I would say that the way that they have learned to weaponize media, the way that they've learned to chop up these little bits, the way that they've learned to disseminate information and alternative facts has become even more invasive and pervasive with the sort of invention of, or the reinvention, shall I say, of the rogue politician, right? This politician that's not actually a politician, which is an old concept, but they put a new spin on it. And I think one thing I will start by saying is I think more than just morality is for sale. I think we're watching people sell their souls like in real time. We're watching people sell their souls or the best parts of themselves, sort of bargain off the best parts of themselves and say, well, I think that the ends justify the means. And that's always been a very dangerous, slippery slope. But I think that one of the questions I'm going to be answering tonight is something that I'm grappling with right now, like right where I sit. What are you willing to do to get where you want to go? Because I think the question is, and this is my final point, and then I'll make room for the other sisters, who I'm very glad to be on with, by the way. There's a question that's not being asked. I watch so many political news shows. I listen to so many political podcasts. I listen to scholars, etc. No one is asking the question of what information do folks that are leading these parties have on these politicians that is controlling them. We are watching in real time. People say one thing, and 3 weeks later, you are making a complete fool of yourself. That has happened in history so many times, but there seems to be a method to the strategy of forcing people now to humiliate themselves in real time. And so my question as a Black woman, as a child of God, as a scholar, as a sister, is what information do these folks have in these parties that they are utilizing to control these politicians like puppets? And with that, I will give the floor over to the other sisters.
Appreciate that. I think you brought into the equation the media element in a significant way, and it's almost this to go viral or to just get that level of popularity. That means you just get to talk out of a dark place that I won't name and get some screen time and some views, and you can make a living just running off at the mouth. That is just as much of a motivation as whatever potential information that parties have that could be arguably utilized to blackmail or cajole. It's really strange. I agree. Lisa, I'm coming to you next. So, are morality and integrity for sale? What is your take on how those things work politically?
Ooh, thank you, Ajane. The thing is, I think it is complicated because it is very easy to get wrapped up. And then once you're on the train, how do you jump off? You do have to have a level of intentionality at staying grounded. Celeste, I'm not sure about you, Ajane, but I know Celeste is entrenched locally where I am. And Felton gets the benefit of hearing a lot of me venting about, oh my gosh, and wow, this is happening and that's happening. And part of me would love to jump out. Like, man, I can't have no problem. A lot of time I just feel dirty sometimes. Like having to even be in the rooms with some people. So the point of reference is, do I go along to get along? How far do I go along to get along? But I have some barometers and I am often taking temperature checks and I'm often checking in. And I think I might've told Felton, but I know I told someone else, like, please constantly keep me in check if you see me going too far left, because honestly, and this is no defense of what that person said. I almost called them a name. What that person said, because that's ridiculous. Mark Robinson has not given any semblance of his life, made no sacrifice. I haven't seen that one sacrifice. I know he's done some things that a lot of people do that are in service to community, but when you go touting those things to put yourself on a higher level, then I'm a believer. So the word says, if you get your crown here on earth, you don't need it in heaven. So that kind of washes out. But I'm just saying that I can see how people can get involved with good intentions, and then they have what they believe are trusting relationships, and people may incrementally, kind of like a battered woman type syndrome, that you kind of like, wait a minute, that didn't feel good, but they said they're sorry. You keep giving them chances, and then things go further. Then all of a sudden, it's like, I don't recognize this person. But then the cost becomes so enormous to disconnect. And most people are not willing to sacrifice their benefits to stay ethical. So to your question, yes, people are selling their ethical beliefs if they had them to begin with. And we are still human. We are still human, and we think we're greater or grander or better than we actually are. But you never know that until you are tested. So people say they're ethical, people say they're honest, but only the test comes to prove that when you have a chance to be honest. So thank you for bringing out that, hey, he didn't even come back and say, no, don't put me on that plane. That man was killed in his 30s just for trying to fight for equality. So no, he did not know that. And I kind of ditched another assignment tonight because this was so interesting to me, because one of my former husbands says, oh, Lisa, you know Mark Robinson, and he's this. I don't know what I do. Like, I don't know that dude. But so I said, I got to get on this show tonight because, I'm kind of wrapped up and I miss y'all too. But this was very interesting because I'm watching like a deer in the headlights at some of this stuff. But I also have to hold a mirror up to myself because you can go down that slippery slope. And before you know it, it's like, ooh, what? So I'm a Shirley Chisholm fan, and I keep telling myself, stay unbought and unbossed, stay unbought and unbossed. So thank you for this show, Felton.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm coming to somebody who's actually met the guy. And again, I'm not here to pile on. I'm a person that will say what I say to your face. And I hate to even give this as much airtime, but you've not responded to what you have to know is a misplaced comment in terms of someone comparing you to someone as dynamic and awesome as MLK was, flaws and all. I mean, and I don't, hey man, if this is somebody willing to step in front of you and take a bullet, no matter what their personal life was like, are you still not going to recognize that this person was willing to step in front of you and take a bullet? I think we will, and I think we shall, and that's eternal for me. So, real quick, made me think when I was growing up, in my great grandmother's house, there was that picture that frame that housed those three people that you kind of just knew not to say a lot about. And at that time, it was Jesus, JFK, and MLK, and they were all in the same framework. Now, I'm sure Abraham Lincoln was in there at one time or another for Black folks, but it was JFK, MLK, and Jesus. So, yeah, bro. It just turned me off that you wasn't even man enough, and I'll say that, to respond and push back on that compliment. Celeste, your thoughts? Politics of people, morality and integrity for sale.
So when I heard you say that originally when Ajane was speaking, it very much hit me. You have to have morals in politics, and you have to have ethics to forego and give them up. One thing I can say about Mark Robinson, having heard him speak, having seen him in person, he believes what he says. He's not compromising his ethics. He's not compromising his morals. He believes this. This is his morals. This is his ethics. I mean, recently, in the last 2 weeks, he stated that he wants to go back to a time when women didn't have the right to vote, based off of the idea that we don't make good decisions and we're too emotional and XYZ. That's this man. That's his thought process. And what him and his comment back to Trump, he did make a comment back to Trump because Trump gave him the compliment when he first got elected to lieutenant governor. He happily received it. One thing I can say about Mark, he can give a speech. The way he became famous was he went viral for speaking at a Greensboro City Council meeting. He then spoke at a Guilford County School Board meeting. And while I don't agree with any of the speeches that he gives, I can say he speaks with the conviction of a minister in the pulpit on a Sunday when he's talking about Sodom and Gomorrah and turning back and looking and turning into a pillar of salt and Jonah spending 40 days in the belly of a whale. He believes this. It's not him compromising his morals or ethics. This is his genuine thought process. Like, you see him in person, you meet him in person, he stands by what he says. It sounds ludicrous and crazy to us, but that's because of where our morals and ethics lie. This is what he feels. This is what he thinks. This is not him speaking to go viral. This is not him speaking off of, ooh, let me say something a little testy to make it to CNN. No. You ask him a question. One thing I can say about him, I'm not a fan. I do not stand. I do not like that man. But if you ask him a question, he's going to give you a genuine answer. His stance on abortion, he believes it. His stance on women's rights, he believes it. Does he believe that he is the second coming of MLK because Trump said so? Because he accepted it? Yeah, I will say he probably believes it. I'd bet money on it, and I'm not a betting woman. Like, this man is not compromising his morals and ethics. He's accepting what he believes to be facts and truthfulness. So does he believe that he is the second coming of MLK because these crazy people have told him that he is and they have hyped him up? It wouldn't shock me if this man has a picture of himself framed in his home because he believes that he is Black Jesus. Like politics aside, some people just talk crazy.
Well,
this is him. He talk crazy.
I don't dispute or deny that aspect of anything. And I think the best and most sustained lies are the ones that the liar believes when they're telling them. But there's something that I'm really honing in on, and that's, to me, the fact that he can't believe on any level. He just can't, that he's comparable to MLK. That's just not, if you holding the apple and the orange, only thing you can say that they're fruit. I can't get into the psychology of it. I can't get into the psychology of it.
No, I'm just saying you have to hold yourself in extremely high esteem and high regard. And a narcissist, a neurosis, definitely would. So
we're not going to go down a tremendous bit of this road, and I really want to make that point clear. But to Lisa's point, to our understanding or anybody observing, if you've not made sacrifices for the whole, then you're not even remotely in the same ballpark. And the polarization that he walks in and swims in is just not, it's not even remotely equatable. There's some other people be compared to, but it ain't MLK. And I understand what you're talking about, though. Believe me, I get the personality, the disorder, but also I don't want to give him all the screen time. This ain't what we're here for. Next thing you know, me and him will be doing something in the street, and I don't want to be in that type moment. Because that's what everybody expects. Y'all know where I was on the Will Smith and Chris Rock slap. I believe, Black people, Black men, most, primarily they encourage, and we just thought to just throw away each other. And I'm not doing that. I would love to have a conversation and find some understanding for some of this ill logic, but it is what it is. Let's go with the next thing. I'm gonna stay with you, Celeste, real quick, because then I got to get to the historian of the bunch. Is our present democracy our founders' worst nightmare come true, or are we just doing it wrong? There's a good basis for that. Go ahead, Celeste.
As a Politico, somebody who involves themselves in local, state, national politics, this is not necessarily our founders' worst nightmare, because I honestly believe one of their worst nightmares was quote unquote Negroes actually having the right to vote in a society where they started with all men are created equal. But I mean, the original works of the Constitution and the frame of government wasn't equal. It wasn't set up to be applicable to the poor, the colored, women. So I definitely don't believe it's their worst nightmare, but do I think that they expected it to fall apart like this? Absolutely not. I don't think that the founding fathers were prepared for a Donald Trump to come into office, but also they themselves were not great leaders to begin with. When you start with how they handled the United States, how they handled the phrase all men are created equal, how they handled what they believed was going to be an equitable and equal society. I mean, the Statue of Liberty says, give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. But yet here we are fighting about people just wanting to come across the border and give themselves a better life. And here we are fighting about African Americans and whether they have the right to actually be here, even though you brought my Black behind over here on the ship. So I ain't asked to come over here, but hey, that's their frame of government. Do I think that they were actually prepared for somebody to try to steal an election? No. But did they also pick the Electoral College so the popular vote didn't decide who won? Yeah. So it's one of those things where, did they always expect white men to white men, and it was only going to be a problem when it wasn't white men in? Or were they expecting like a certain type? Like I have questions about all of that. Like the historian has to answer, because me as the Politico in the room, this is what they were expecting. Like this is what they would have been okay with because it was one of them doing it. Now, if Obama got up there and acted like this, we would. Nah, that wasn't gonna. If Hillary would have said that the election was stolen in 2016 and started something, but is this what they expected as long as it was one of them doing it, considering that the Constitution was written by a bunch of white men without the rights of anybody else included? I honestly just think, they would have been cool.
I'm gonna let Ajane take most of this, but your answers are kind of in the realm. The thing that you have to consider is primarily, I'm basing that question on education, and of course, a lot of what they desire was some land ownership and things of that nature. I would almost believe that if they could be resurrected, they might have been more. They would have been probably way more okay with Obama than what Trump is doing, and actually the state of our democracy in terms of how easily people are influenced to vote based on some regard of popularity and some other sensational behaviors. But yeah, let's go to the historian from Texas, one of those places that didn't want to necessarily remain attached and is still
Don't do that. Not in front of all these folks. Don't even do that. And I got how many Carolinas? All of them. Okay, so don't do me like that. Celeste, if you will, for a second. Oh, don't leave me, Celeste. Okay, sorry. Before you jump off, I wanted you to clarify your question that you had for me.
My question for you as the historian was, what would be your perception and analysis of what the founding fathers actually intended America to become? Because me as a political individual, I look at it, they didn't intend for white women to have rights. Mm-hmm. They did not intend for Black men to even be considered human beings. Black women were most definitely not going to be included in any piece of that. And they definitely were not expecting or preparing for what was then the Aztec and Inca individuals in South America, their descendants. They definitely weren't expecting anybody Hispanic to come in here. So outside of white men, like, they weren't expecting anybody. So Hillary and Barack, I think they're more offensive to the founding fathers and their ideas than Donald, because yes, lacking education, but a Black man who was never intended to have rights, with a Black wife who didn't even exist in the thought process, and then a white woman who would have been at her husband's beck and call in 1776 when we became a nation. Which one's more, like, I wouldn't know which one is more offensive. Somebody who's uneducated but quote unquote has money, which is up for debate, or people who were never actually considered individual citizens and humans to begin with, having some type of power or influence.
And Felton, what was yours? You want me to just follow that stream?
Yeah, the question should be similar. Just throw this in there. Is our present democracy our founders' worst nightmare come true, or are we just doing it wrong? You can answer all of those together. Yeah.
I want to start with that one, and then I'll work my way back to answer Celeste's question. Is our present democracy the founding fathers' nightmare? I want to make something very clear. I second what Celeste said about the way that people were written out. It was not by accident. It was by design. When you take a look at the U.S. Constitution, it strictly grants rights to corporations and people that are considered corporations. Everything else outside of that is left to ambiguity for a reason. Because when you write ambiguity into a law, you have plausible deniability first. You have the upper hand because you're still the only one who can change that law. It's difficult to add or subtract from that law. You also have the upper hand because the laws are left up for interpretation, which we know you cannot legislate the sentiment. I get into debates with JDs all the time. There is nothing that we can do to make sure that everyone interprets the law the exact same way. This is the slippery slope with the law. This is why ambiguity exists in the Constitution, because when you couple that ambiguity with that slippery slope, all of the power belongs to the people who initially wrote the law. And so I want to go back to, is this democracy our founding fathers' worst nightmare? I don't even know if I believe that the founding fathers had democracy in their mind in terms of a process, not something solidified. You go about things in a democratic fashion. That is very different from establishing a democracy. Going about things in a democratic fashion, for example, when we take a look at the way that even the American Revolution happened, that was autocracy, that was an oligarchy, that was a civil war that went about things in a semi-democratic fashion. There was a guise of democracy. 1/3 of the population by the mid 1700s said, okay, we need to get out of this. That 1/3 was the elites who owned the corporations, who did not want to pay the taxes. And so when you track what happened with the government after that, when they issue the Articles of Confederation, they make very clear, this ain't about no democracy. This is a democratic process. But this isn't about a democracy, because when the Articles of Confederation failed, it failed why? Because the federal government was too weak to do what? To tax and to regulate weapons, violence, and human bodies as human resources, period. There was nothing else. It wasn't about religion. It wasn't about anything else. It was about going about establishing federal power in a democratic process, not necessarily establishing a democratic government. This is a representative democracy. That's not the same as a direct democracy. And so my criticism to the American people would be to ask, why are we afraid to criticize the very values of our nation? There are some values of our nation that are amazing that we need to have these conversations about on a global scale, right? We got some stories of some people that came here and survived against all odds. But on the flip side, I don't think the founding fathers were concerned with democracy. I think they were concerned with building an infrastructure for corporations and corporate power. And I believe that they went about doing that in a semi-democratic fashion. And I believe that imperialism is about making sure that things happen in a democratic fashion, in a democratic process, which is not necessarily the same as establishing a democracy. And so one of the final things that I will say is that one of the things I always warn my students about, Lisa, I want to respond to something that you said earlier. You were talking about how you and Celeste were entrenched in politics. I was entrenched in politics. I found out that God was calling me out of that for a moment because I had to get out and I had to establish myself as an intellect. And I had to find out that my fight was with the pen for right now while I'm writing this first book. And then I can get back out there. That was difficult for me, Lisa. It was so hard because I am so much about the people. I'm about the city council meetings, the community meetings. But why do I say that? I say that because one of the things I had to learn how to do is something that I stand on frequently. I had to learn how to take a step back and see the government as a whole. One of the ways that we are misled as an American people is that they keep the population split just enough so that we can't come together. It's 49-51 on everything. People with the American dream, people with patriotism, people with the shrinking middle class, any criticism that we have of our government, they keep it split 49-51, 49-51. How do we wake up and come out of that? We have to understand that government corruption is a two-headed snake. Both of these parties believe in corporation over people. Neither one of them are critiquing corporations. All of them still let be on the books that a corporation is a person. What a beautiful baby. That just made my whole night. But I'll leave it at that. If they want change, if they are about people, why is it still in the books that a corporation is considered a person first? And why are no parties critiquing corporate power? And I'll leave it at that. And I will say, I don't believe that the founding fathers were concerned about constructing a direct democratic government. They were concerned about constructing representative democracy and people who are going to keep corporations in power.
Yeah, so I appreciate all of that. I appreciate both of those wonderful responses. There's the element that I'm speaking of concerning who they thought were the people that would be eligible to hold office and the people who would be able to vote for them. You know, sexism aside, racism aside, yeah, they were thinking that they would have intelligent people in the fold. And which is why they kind of wanted to make sure who could vote was not just everybody. So it was not going to be authentic democracy. Hold on one second.
Go ahead.
I'm going to hit you for 1 second. I'm going to Lisa, and then we're going to get back around. So it was never going to be the authentic democracy of every vote counts and all of that stuff. And we still having trouble making that happen to this day. But there was some aspects of understanding how the government worked that needed to be incorporated and not just vote for people that made you feel good or that said something you liked. So that's kind of how I meant the question, and I apologize for not being clear, but I don't apologize for not being clear at the same time because I got some wonderful responses and I'm grateful. So Aj, give me a quick hit, and then I'm going to hit Lisa with the same question, and we're going to get back around.
I want to say, do not forget that from the beginning, one of the things that stifled the political parties and divided people was this question of should people in the federal government be elite and educated, or should they be so-called common? This is a very long and very contentious debate. Both parties have flipped, and the ways that they have flipped is by this principle. Should we be elite? Should we be this? Should we be that? One of the most pervasive things that both political parties have up their alley is the fact that they are not really who they say they are. The Republicans say they're the common man, right? This question of common people being in the government, but they operate spoil systems like nobody's business. That's old. That's Andrew Jackson. That's 1828, right? The Republicans are this anti-elite, but they own all the corporations. And the Democrats are these people who say, oh, you know, we understand the common man's experience, but you have all the education. Okay, so from the beginning, this has been a facade, and the American people need to know that from the beginning. Neither party has been honest about who they really want in government.
Yeah, I think that's we definitely understand that trade-off exists, and I always say that. Okay, so I'm coming to you one very quickly. Then I'm going to Lisa because Lisa hadn't answered yet. No, but I think hold on 1 second. I'm coming to you. I promise you. Let me do.
I'm done. You're good.
Let me do the facility. Let me keep calm in the seas. So I lost the train of thought. Go ahead, Celeste.
I was going to say, when we talk about, when you just made that statement about, was it about the educated voting or was it about the common man? And were they expecting the uneducated to participate? W.E.B. was the first Black man to graduate from Harvard with a PhD, and he didn't get to vote until he was 40 years old. So is it about education? Is it about intelligence? Or
I literally said, just for clarity, racism and sexism aside, I'm not making any concessions for the wrongheadedness of it. I'm saying that they didn't envision at any point that we might have some of these nincompoops in the places that they actually occupy. That's all I'm saying. Lisa, coming to you, I want you to have, your fun time because, I love y'all women, but good God Almighty, boy, y'all be on me now. Y'all ready? I ain't got Jada Wayne, the referee. So, Lisa, your thoughts on this part of the question? This question is our present democracy our founders' worst nightmare come true, or are we just doing it wrong?
I'm gonna go way left. I like left. Honestly, it's a little bit of all of what some of what Anjanae was saying, and some of what Celeste was saying, and then my own little thing. I don't think they cared. I think it was about how can I make the most successful thing for this moment that I think is going to be successful for what this moment looks like. But then on the other hand, I think they would enjoy seeing the others fight to keep oppression. I mean, just honestly, this is these jollies that some people are having from just the fight. Like, why do people love the chaos? So honestly, I think the founding fathers may have gotten a kick out of the, oh yeah, we didn't really consider those people, but we like not considering those people. So yeah, keep fighting not to consider those people. Because people are getting their kicks. I listened to an NPR story yesterday that was talking about the country music thing. And Felton, you already had a show a few months back about one of my formerly favorite artists, tried it in a small town, and talked about how after the controversy, this person has stayed on number one for 16 weeks. So I don't think people have changed. So, some things shift, but people in power like to stay in power. Like, what is the term? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power is a magnificent thing. And those that try to act like they don't really like it, they're lying. They might try to lie to us, but you can't lie to yourself. What you do with it is what matters to me, because you can use, powers for good or evil. So I think they didn't care about who was being disenfranchised. That wasn't a word back then. But then I think that, it was white men at the table. And I think they would get their jollies right now with saying, yeah, they're fighting to keep our dream alive. That it's all about us.
As everything crashes down. Yeah, I y'all don't know how much I appreciate this. I got some brilliant people in this space with me, and I know everybody who wishes they could have you as guests are extremely jealous. I hope that you can never be compromised. Your morality and integrity need to stay right here on Grown Folks Business. I appreciate y'all. Ajane, I'm coming back to you. Let's kind of get through this question, because I have one wrap-up question that I think will give us a good bow on this conversation. And this is a good one. I'm so happy. And, it's political season, so we'll get back to these conversations. As you make some comments that I think strongly are connected to this question, and you can feel free to restate or just expand. So who are we voting for? Our representatives or our exploiters?
Okay, y'all know I'm the note-taking sister. Okay, so I don't play that game. So I'm like over here scribbling. Thanks for being patient. Who are we voting for? Our representatives or our exploiters? You know what I think? First of all, I think the American people need to hold themselves accountable and stop exploiting themselves. Because when you put these people in office and you don't hold these folks accountable and you don't engage, you are exploiting yourself. You have made yourself a resource to a machine that is out there to use and abuse. Second of all, there are times where I believe, let me say this. In terms of advocacy, I believe that we have things flipped. I'm sure you all will agree with this, because we're all like super politically active. The way that we control our people not becoming our exploiters, we need to start incubating them at the local level and move them up. Come on, we got to get more discipline. Because if you can't handle city council, we snatching you right off. You're not running for mayor, sis. Or young man, you're not running for mayor, and we're not going to see you run for governor. So I will say that I can point to some geographies. Y'all know I'm an environmental historian. Where people hold positions that are representatives and are not exploiters, but it's because the people are not exploiting themselves. They are not willing to allow their media to exploit them via stereotypes, etc. And then there's a whole other flip side, right? There are an entire group of politicians that are not by name, that are running community organizations, running hospitals, running education systems, that are the true representatives that are not willing to be exploited, and they're exploited and not able to move up into real politics because they're being exploited because they won't exploit us. Sorry, I know that was a lot, but I think we need to focus on finding those people who are truly representatives in those so-called non-political organizations. Like I said, like the people running the 501c3s, the people running the, exactly, take care of home. Yes. The people running these community organizations that have to take politics into account. Those are the people we need to move into these positions, because we are being exploited. And the higher you go up the food chain, the worse it gets. But it's incubated somewhere. And because we exploit ourselves, we're not able to catch the exploitation before they get into a real position where you become a monster. So I'll leave it at that.
Agreed. And a lot of that was something else you referenced earlier. Is there's too much money in politics, way too much money in politics. Celeste, coming to you real quick, and remember, I want to get through this one. I have one final question that's going to put a bow on this thing. But are we voting for our representatives or our exploiters?
I'm gonna say both, because when Ajane made her point, we don't necessarily start people at local government and move them up until they're in the federal government, Senate and Congress. But even though a lot of people show up with great intentions, whether they start at the city level, go straight to being a congressman or a representative, serving in their state house, XYZ, they show up with good intentions. No matter which party you show up with, they show up with the best intentions for their individual party. And then they get a taste of power. And then they get a taste of that expense account funded by a corporation. Then they get comfortable in that position. Like, what is it? Mitch McConnell don't go back to Kentucky a lot. He don't. Diane, I forgot her last name. I can never get it right, but California. I can't.
Did she pass away recently? Yeah. Like a lot of millions of dollars.
A lot of people were upset with her during her term because she didn't go back to California a lot. I mean, you go to DC, and I will say, like, I went as a 22-year-old fresh out of college, fresh out of an election cycle, and it was so cool, and it was so much going on, like walking down a congressional hallway, being in these spaces, seeing these people in real life, hearing the conversations that happen behind closed doors and that happen in the hallways, like seeing what you believe is magic. Baby, it ain't magic. It's BS. It's bull.
I like
and
that.
You have these people that show up and they want to help and they want to give back and they want to go back and they want to do XYZ. Republicans and conservatives show up and they want to help the small guy, the guy with no education, XYZ. You have the Democrat who shows up who wants to get everybody education and wants to find ways for free college and wants to have conversations about universal education, universal pre-K, XYZ. They show up with great intentions. And then they're like, I want to keep my office. And to keep my office, how do I keep these corporations happy so that they don't endorse in my race, or they endorse me, or they fund me? Or most corporations have PACs that they're a part of. And they're going to give to this PAC, which is going to help me in the long run so XYZ can happen. They go there with good intentions. And I will say at all levels of government, they show up with good intentions in most cases. And then they get the power that comes with the office, the influence, the feeling of importance, because most of them have low self-confidence or low self-esteem. Most of them were called ugly growing up because, let's be honest, ain't that many attractive politicians out there. And they want to stay because they feel relevant. It's their first time feeling like they have the voice in the room, not just a voice in a room. And for most of them, it's their first time being able to drop $500 on a dinner or $2,000 on an Armani suit.
Feel important.
Most politicians after their first term, they're not there to help anybody anymore. They're there to maintain their power. And that means that the people at home that they're supposed to be serving get whatever they get, which is why term limits should honestly be something that's discussed, but that's a whole different conversation. But yes, they show up with both of them, and then they get that dose of power, that taste of sweetness, and that taste of relevancy, and they don't want to give it up. So I'm going to keep whoever I have to keep happy to stay here. And Ajane made a point about corporations being in power to begin with. Corporations are very much in influence, very much in power, and very much have more say in our government than the average voter.
All right. Well said. Lisa, coming to you, and then I'm gonna run around her space with the final question. But who are you? Who are we voting for? Sorry, who are we voting for? Our representatives or our exploiters?
So I don't exactly agree with Celeste about most people. I think I'm fairly attractive. I ran for office and I have a great self-confidence. Oh yeah, that dude right there. I think he's fairly attractive too. So I was kind of like, what? Just teasing. But I honestly don't. So as I've run companies, I know that there is a place for companies, and Felton actually helped me articulate my displeasure with the term capitalism. I am a capitalist. I'm going to capitalize on opportunities. What I think is not enough of us understand what it takes to operate one thing or another. So some people do end up selling their souls for things they don't understand for the greater good. They think, so for instance, I think if I incentivize this company to come here by offering all these breaks, I get to get my people 20 or 100 some jobs. That's going to put food on their table for however long that company's there. Without a level of professional engagement, understanding a lot of the intricacies of that, you get caught up. And then you just make checking boxes, because I am seeing a lot more people in positions of authority that don't read the emails, that don't read all of the materials. So I honestly believe a lot of people have good intentions, but it's very time consuming. A lot of people are lazy, but a lot of people are also distracted. And especially in certain spheres, there are certain areas where people are not as educated, whether that's professionally educated through our educational institution or by listening to NPR, reading newspapers or magazines, Inc., Wall Street Journal. So they're just making the best choices that they can. And then they do try to self-preserve when they get attacked. So without certain companies, we can't have jobs. Our society is a consumption society. So if we don't like the corporation, stop buying the stuff. So if we stop buying the stuff, then other people aren't going to have jobs. Then if you don't have jobs, then maybe our consumption will start going down. But that's a whole nother thing. So I'm idealistic in some respect, because I've also seen people who I still believe in. So like Dr. Alma Adams, who started local, moved upstate. Now she's federal. She keeps coming back. She keeps having a level of engagement. I haven't seen that myself with her being sold out per se. So she's one that I watch. And then other people that I watch, I don't listen to what people say, because their actions speak way louder than their words. But the people that I have watched, and I will look them up, but that's time consuming. And as already been articulated, you guys are educated and you're in the know. That is not the massive populace. Most people can't take this level of time to investigate Mark Robinson. Oh, he's a Black man. And actually what sociologically, I'm changing my thought as to looking into why Black men are making this mad exodus from Democrat to Republican. So I think people just don't know. We have all these distractions and these bells and whistles, and then people who have good intentions, they make the best decisions that they can at the time. Then they try to save themselves by not saying, oops, I made a mistake, or oops, I didn't read, or oops, I didn't show up to the right meeting. So call me idealistic, but I do give people certain chances, unless and until that doesn't make sense. And if you can't invest enough, if the carnage is so great, I will tell somebody you should quit this job. This is not what you should be doing, because the collateral damage is not worth you not investing what it takes to be have a level of informed decision making, because this is kind of bad. And it's amazing you guys mentioned Feinstein, because I'm just all into NPR, unbiased political view, hearing about how that fight for that seat and how California is so blue. And then there's a retired MLB player that's running for that seat that's a Republican. So This is all very interesting to me. So I'm going to have a sociological experiment while y'all historians and politicians have y'all little experiment.
Come on with it. We all get smarter together. Again, I greatly appreciate everyone's input and what everyone has shared tonight. This has been awesome. To your point about money in politics and about the dollars that can be had once you occupy certain places and what corporations represent. I'm reading MLK's the book he wrote before he was assassinated. Where do we go from here? Chaos or Community? And one of the things he was speaking of, which is a show I have in my mind to do concerning the black dollar. When people think this black dollar is separate from the American dollar, it's not. But he was encouraging an understanding of where to spend it, which places were actually the ones that you were welcome and what corporations welcomed your business and which ones didn't. And that's the power of the black dollar. Don't just give it away to Nike. Uh-oh. I hope I didn't get no trouble. So anyway, this is the last question. Breezing through the space. I'm coming back to you, Lisa, with you and your grandbaby there. And then y'all just give me a quick, fast, dirty answer because the State of the Union is tonight. What is the state of our union, in your opinion, in 1 or 2 sentences or less? What short?
This don't count. Thank you, first of all, Anjane. And this is my grandson's introduction to the world. Don't be a consumer, Roman. The state of our union, it's going to ebb and flow. We're going to have ups. We're going to have downs. I'm just going to, each one reach one. I'm going to try to encourage people to do the absolute best they can at participating in this current democracy. Be the change you want to see. That was probably 4 sentences. Sorry.
Oh, love it. Here we go. That was a good example, Lisa. All right, now coming to you, Aj. What's the state of our union?
Well, friends, the state of our union is what it's always been. It's been a certain portion of the population causing hell and chaos and confusion. A certain portion of the population riding the fence, going with the wave, whatever, whether it be blue, red, whatever. And then there's a certain population of people that are saying, we're not going to take this. We're going to let love win instead of money and corruption. And the state of our union is what it has been. It is a mess, but it is survivable if we do it with love and if we do it together. And if we do it with knowledge, because without knowledge, the people do what? They perish. When you perish, that means you fade away slowly. Perishing happens from the inside out. You don't even know what's going on till you're too far gone. So the state of our union is a mess, but the best part of this country has always been the people. And
it's
not,
our mess.
not
Yeah.
so.
It's our mess. I received that. It's
And
our
we need
mess.
to fix it.
And we can fix it with love. Celeste, what is the state of our union?
Joseph Robinette Biden is trying his best. God bless him with the Congress and the congressional body that he has now. Protect it, preserve the democracy of it, preserve the actual democracy of it. Let me be clear. And progress it. The 3 Ps: protect, preserve, progress. We need to take steps in a direction versus stagnating in whatever cesspool we've been in. I know people want to say, oh, Obama, the conquering hero. Yes, he was. He's great, XYZ. But since Ronald Reagan, America has been in a cesspool of whatever, and we've stagnated. We still have not clearly found our way out. America has always been a mess, but whatever was going on in the 80s, yeah, we got to progress out of it. So protect, preserve, progress.
Beautiful. I've spent a marvelous hour with some amazing, intelligent, and outstanding women. I'm so appreciative. I'm so appreciative. I muted myself. I'm so appreciative that I get to do this, and I'm just grateful to you guys make time for me and make time for Grown Folks Business. I thank you all. I will look to see you again next week. Now I might have to change topics and get back to this one again because this has been awesome. This is edifying. This is what people need to hear. Even if it's a little bit, it can turn into a lot. You create a spark, you start a fire. Thank you all for spending the time. Let's do this again. Take good care. Enjoy our president talking as best he can tonight. Because
don't play him like that.
I'm going to bed.
The morality and integrity. I don't blame you. He probably going to bed too. He probably going to bed too. The morality and integrity's got to come into play at some point when it's time for you to say, "Let me get somebody else in there."
My name is Bennett. I'm not in it.
Hey, you
love
are
y'all.
Nerdy best friend. You getting a text message tonight.
Love y'all. Love y'all. Have a good night. Y'all have a good night. Take care.